This is the Power Break Podcast number 082, titled, Are You Too Soft? Hi, I'm Bob Brubaker along with JT. We hope you'll stay tuned as we seek to give you a little power in this break to help you succeed in the race of life.
This is the Power Break Podcast with a focus on the spiritual, the mental, and the physical aspects, all to help you succeed in the race of life. For show notes from today's podcast, go to bobbrubaker.com and follow the link for the Power Break Podcast. What's up, Bob?
I just want to say thanks for changing your schedule to come in to record today.
Oh, are you kidding me? I would never miss this blessing, my friends.
Oh, well, it's a blessing to have you here, and I know that we goof off a lot, but, you know, it's good. We're good buddies, and we just enjoy a little time together recording each week, and JT has a full schedule and changed your schedule. So there you go.
Yeah, no, it's all good, man. You know, I want to talk about this title because it reminded me of something that Gabriel said the other day. So he rubbed up against me, and man, this must have been a sign from God about my working out and what I'm actually doing, because he bumped up against me, against my stomach, and he was like, "Oh, that's too soft." And I'm like, "Oh, too soft." That's it, kid. You and your honesty.
Way to go, Gabriel.
Yeah, way to go, Gabriel.
I wanted to say also, before we get started the program, a good comparison. You know, we make fun of my whoop all the time, you know, and it seems that the whoop does whoop me.
Yes.
And this guy was talking about a whooping that he threatened his kids with a whooping. And I thought, there you go, the whooping. That's why it's titled Whoop, because it gives me a whooping all the time.
What has the whoop been saying? Are you recovering correctly?
Yeah, I've had some good scores.
All right, good, man. Good.
But still, it's very critical of my sleep. And so I'm trying harder. You know, I'm trying really hard, and sometimes it stresses me out because I wake up in the middle of the night and I can't get back to sleep, and I say, "Oh no, what's my whoop going to say?"
That's right. What is your whoop going to say? Yeah, I find that the more you try to get more sleep, the less you actually can get. So,
exactly.
That's bad.
Anyway, well, we just want to say thank you to everyone who has been, even though JT is soft.
Well, I guess I answered your first question. Have I been accused of being soft? Yeah. The answer is yes by my son a couple of days ago.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Well, but also I wanted to say thanks to everybody that has taken the time to spread the word about the Power Break Podcast, and also leave us a rating and a review wherever you download the podcast. We appreciate that. It really does help us to get the word out, and also help us to be in touch with more possible listeners.
Yeah, for sure. How about you, man? Have you ever been out of shape? Now, out of shape and soft to me is kind of two different things.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, I feel kind of soft right now because back in January I had some surgery that is not healing. And so because of that, I haven't been able to work out. Although yesterday I just put all the doctor's orders on hold and just got on my bike.
Yes, that's because that's the stubbornness that I expect from you, my friend.
It felt so good to be back on the bike.
I bet it did,
and my lungs said, "Hey, Bob, we've missed this."
Yeah.
So anyway,
sure.
Sometimes when you feel like you're getting soft, and when you haven't been able to work out, sometimes schedule gets in the way.
Yeah, for sure.
And you feel like you're getting soft. It's real easy to get soft, though, today because of a lack of constant physical labor. And people at one time were just hard.
Yeah.
I mean, they did
because they didn't have a choice.
They lived in an agrarian society, or just, anyway. So you have to be disciplined to be active enough to avoid being soft physically. But as we always say here on the Power Break Podcast, discipline in one aspect of life leads to discipline in all aspects of life. And likewise, a lack of discipline in one area leads to being soft in all areas.
Yeah, no truer words. Because I think about it in the mental aspect, in the mental realm, whenever I think about softness, because people just, if the complaint department is open, that's usually because people are being too soft.
Oh, yeah.
In my own personal opinion, and me included. So if I'm grumbling, it's because I'm just being soft. I just don't want to do it, or
that's a good
I'm
point.
mentally weak, or
yeah.
So that's what I think about, when I think about it. I know you're going to talk about what the Apostle Paul thinks about it.
Yeah, he feared going soft in his walk with the Lord.
Yeah.
That's why when we read in 1 Corinthians 9:24-27, he says, "Do you not know that in a race all the runners run, but only one receives the prize?" So he says, "Run that you may obtain." Every athlete exercises self-control or discipline in all areas. He says they do it to receive a perishable wreath, but we an imperishable one. "So I do not run aimlessly. I do not box as one beating the air," he says, "but I discipline my body to keep it under control, lest after preaching to others I myself should be disqualified." Scared of being too soft.
Yeah. This is really important stuff, and I want to continue to talk about that as we turn to your blog, which is also titled, Are You Too Soft? So, folks, if you haven't been to BobBrubaker.com, I would encourage you to do that. Go over and subscribe. You'll get it every Monday, and it's really just food for the soul for me. So it's pretty awesome stuff. But yeah, let's keep talking about that because, one of the things that you and I have talked about many times is just the overall, the data sometimes can lie depending on who's presenting it. Mm-hmm. But right now, the data really kind of says that men are getting softer in many aspects that are really, really important. When you talked about the endurance athlete participation, how it's changed significantly to where the majority of people involved in endurance athletics are female over male. So, for males, you and I have talked about that, and I see that honestly at work. Some of the guys that I've worked with, some of the guys that I have contact with, from other agencies or whatever, there's a different kind of, I call it toughness. I don't want to be insulting because a lot of people, if you call somebody not tough, they get pretty insulted by it.
Well, there you go to the complaint department again. That's a sign of what? Softness?
Of softness, yeah. But, I don't see the mental toughness. I see a lot of complaining,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
So the title of the article is, Are You Too Soft? Nobody plans to fail or give up, as I said there, but much of what we do before we are tested has a great deal to do with whether we'll come through it or not. The problem comes from thinking that we'll never fail or give up. That's really a sense of pride speaking, and that's the beginning of trouble. 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 12 says, "Therefore, let anyone who thinks that he stands take heed lest he fall." I mentioned in the article that the pride factor can come up in the way that we neglect what needs to be done to keep ourselves moving forward. Otherwise, we slip back into complacency and become soft. That softness shows itself in all aspects of life, in the mental, the physical, and the spiritual. Recently, I noted in the article that the number of men in ministry that I'm familiar with, just to my knowledge and acquaintance, who've either given up, fallen, or have just decided to leave the ministry, whatever. Some national statistics show only 30% of ministers retire today. Only 30% retire. Now, granted, that is because some ministers don't believe in retirement.
Oh, well, yeah. I understand that part of it.
Okay, but continue in the service of the Lord until they take their last breath. But the sad reality is that most ministers give up long before retirement, or worse, some have become a statistic in moral failure. If this is the statistic for men who have taken vows to serve God the rest of their life and care for the flock, what about others? The failure rate goes even larger.
Wow.
And then you ask yourself, why? Maybe it's because we are too soft. Now, softness physically comes about to a person when a combination of not keeping up with a workout plan while not being disciplined about what they take into their body. It's well documented that today's generations are soft in comparison to the World War II generation.
Oh, yeah.
Now, those people were tough.
Yeah, that's a different group right there.
Yeah, that's something of comparable age. Generations generations actually become soft when they're more focused on life of ease and comfort than they are of doing whatever it takes to get the job done. That's exactly what you were talking about.
Yeah. I go back to that statement made by Nick Saban, not Pat Saban, the lady who worked for me at Largo or worked with me at Largo.
Check out a couple of podcasts ago.
Yeah. Everybody wants to be a beast. I don't know anybody that doesn't. Mm-hmm. But very few people want to do what the beast does.
Yeah. That's a football analogy, folks.
Yeah. But I mean, really, all of us want to be, we watch these shows like The Biggest Loser or American Ninja Warrior or whatever, and it's because we look at that and we we envy that in other people. Mental toughness, spiritual toughness, physical toughness. Yeah. We value that, and we value that for a reason, because God values that.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. You know, it's interesting, the record of the mighty men of David.
Yes.
In the Old Testament that were listed. Those guys did some phenomenal things.
Yeah, that's some physical toughness right there.
And mental toughness.
And mental toughness.
Yeah. Yep. And, of course, spiritual toughness.
Yep.
I'll consider the monumental things that the World War II generation did in sacrifice for their country during the World War II era. Consider what a great shape people were in that time from not being afraid of hard labor. Now, today, the same spirit is seen in very few as you look around at the ratio of people who are maybe obese or to the number of people who aren't. This is not meant to be a criticism of a person's weight, as I said in the article, but the outward appearance, rather a call to a lifestyle evaluation over complacency is important. In general, are you soft or disciplined? Granted, it takes more effort today to live a harder lifestyle because of all the time-saving and effort-saving conveniences. Giving into the convenience lifestyle, however, will only make you soft, and going long enough and hard enough will maybe, of course, keep you from achieving the things you really want to in life when it gets difficult.
Yeah. You know, it reminds me of something our old worship pastor, Matt, he showed me an article, and I read it. And when I read it, I was shocked, because what they found was a lot more people, musician-wise, have turned towards acoustic guitar as opposed to electric guitar. And the reason why is because acoustic guitar is very forgiving. And usually you're just playing chords. You're really not playing a lot of melody lines usually with acoustic guitars. It's very forgiving. Electric guitar is not. If you make one mistake, you know, especially if you have delay on the guitar, you get to hear that over and over again until that delay goes bye-bye when you make a mistake.
I'm not exactly sure what that means, folks, but JT is an accomplished musician, so we're glad that
I don't know about
he knows what he's doing.
But really, there's a required toughness as far as applying yourself to that instrument. If you want to be good, if you want to sound good, if you want to be smooth, you have to practice. If you don't practice, you cannot hack your way through.
Wow. You can't fool anybody.
You can't fool anybody, because and that's what the article said. The article said that people just aren't into dedicating themselves to that craft as much as they used to be, because, you know, our attention spans don't last very long anymore. We're into immediate gratification. So if you're not, you know, playing like Eddie Van Halen by the end of like 3 weeks, you're like, oh, I'll try something else. Obviously, I'm not naturally gifted. Well, I don't know. You look at people like Larry Bird in sports. The man wasn't naturally gifted. If anything, he was an uncoordinated white dude just like me. But he went out of his way to practice.
He really did.
Harder
Michael Jordan did too.
Everybody else.
Yeah.
Practice harder than everybody else. Yeah.
Well, I'd like to compare the being soft then to the Christian vein in general. Today, people are softies, almost ready to give up and give in at any convenience. Whether that is true or not remains to be seen. A challenge to wake up, though, and ask the question of softness about yourself is an important double check. Christians become spiritually soft because they fail to keep up with consistent spiritual disciplines out of laziness or a focus on comfort and self-gratification when they figure they have enough strength or fortitude to overcome temptations that come along in life. Well, that's wrong. Consider the attitude, as we mentioned, from the Apostle Paul.
Yep.
He was concerned that he would be a castaway. So rather than so he's afraid of becoming a spiritual softy, so to speak. And so he disciplined his body, which implies all disciplines in spiritual, mental, and physical. And he was driven by being afraid of becoming soft. And that's not bad enough. He said, this motivates me. I have a rare lung disease that forces me to keep my airway clear by working out hard all the time. So having lived for nearly 15 years now at this point beyond my life expectancy, for which I am grateful to God, I just follow the doctor's orders to be disciplined about working out. That's why I'm crazy. It's those doctors that drove me crazy. Well, it's actually the fact that, you don't work out, Bob, you'll be 6 feet under.
Yeah. And, on top of that, because there's a lot of people who are told things like that. A lot of people like, hey, something, you need to quit smoking or you're going to get cancer. Okay, you're absolutely right. Or you have cancer, you need to quit smoking first and foremost. And you see people outside of Moffitt smoking a cigarette and then they go back in and get their cancer treatment.
Yeah.
So, but you are the kind of person that I've always seen disciplines themselves in all things, just like Paul. So there's a discipline shift for you spiritually, mentally, and physically. Mm-hmm. So that does it shock me that you work out because you know you have to? No, that doesn't shock me because you do what Paul says. You're kind of that's what I want to be. Is I want to be the true athlete that he talks about. Mm-hmm. You know, an athlete disciplines himself in all things, right? And he talks about that specifically. So, yeah, it doesn't shock me that you actually do what you're supposed to do.
And even compete with my sleep.
Whoop, whoop.
I don't want to be whooped by my whoop. Anyway, check it out. The Power Break blog is seen at bobrubaker.com. The title of the article is Are You Too Soft? We just covered some of the highlights. Check it out for yourself, the entire article, at bobrubaker.com.
All right, what else is going on, Bob? Anything new?
Well, I wanted to step in here and talk about the little book that I've written called God's Power Line of Prayer. I really enjoy studying prayer. I have read many of the old Puritans and other people about that, and I've written about it several times. And this is taken from a series of messages that I preached here at Christ Community Presbyterian Church when I was digging into the fact that there's all kinds of help for us in prayer. And that God has ordained, okay? He has ordained prayer as His sovereign means to carry out what He's designed to happen in the world. And if we don't take advantage of that, what we're doing is just basically spitting in the face of God. And so I called this God's power line of prayer, that we actually step in to the work of God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit, and working together what's going on in the world. So check it out. It's at bobrubaker.com. Click on the resource page and then scroll down to where it says books. Click on that, and you'll go through the books, and you'll see God's Power Line of Prayer. And while you're there at bobrubaker.com, check out the sermon links to the sermons I'm preaching here at Christ Community Presbyterian Church. Currently going through the book of Philippians. And what an exciting book.
Awesome.
You talk about someone that advocates discipline. That's the Apostle Paul. Forgetting those things which are behind and pressing forward to what is before.
Yeah.
Anyway, check it out, bobrubaker.com.
All right, so here we go. It's time for What About This? That's the time on the podcast for questions and answers. If you have a question that you would like myself or Bob to answer, please go to jt@bobrubaker.com, and we'll answer your question on an upcoming Power Break podcast. I read my email.
Just hoping that JT will look at his email.
I'm sorry. Anyway.
She's a faithful listener, my beloved wife, Jan. So thank you, Jan, for listening and for being patient with JT.
Yes, very much so, and I have gone soft on my email reading. Yes, so I apologize.
But he's proclaiming today before everyone that he will be more disciplined.
I will be more disciplined. That's affirmative. All right, question number 1. I can't wait to get into this. So let's talk a little bit about going soft spiritually. 2 questions. How do we recognize that we're going soft spiritually? And how do we recover from it?
Let me just say that nobody wants to be accused of being soft. Now, what would you say if your doctor, Dr. Howard, said, JT, you're getting soft?
Or your cholesterol is getting high. Yeah. Either way, you could fill in just about anything.
Yeah. Okay, you don't like to be told that. Likewise, nobody wants their pastor or their elders or someone close to them to tell them that, hey, you're showing signs of spiritual softness, as they ought to be telling you, and then telling you to get in shape. But thank God for anyone in your life that would be brave enough to challenge you with such a question. Otherwise, we're admonished to constantly question or examine ourselves.
Yep.
2 Corinthians chapter 13 says, examine yourselves, see whether you are in the faith. Test yourselves, or do you not realize about yourselves that Jesus Christ is in you, unless indeed you fail to meet the test. So here's Paul. I mentioned Philippians. Here's Paul in Philippians chapter 3. Brothers, I do not consider that I have made it my own, but one thing I do, forgetting what lies behind and straining forward to what lies ahead, I press toward the goal for the prize of the upward call of God in Christ Jesus. Let those who are mature think this way, and if anything you think otherwise, God will reveal this to you. Recovering from softness, then, means getting back to the important spiritual disciplines, having a plan, making a schedule, and keeping some accountability. So stop and think about it. How do we stop going down that trail? Having someone in our life and listening to someone in our life.
Yeah.
It could be the heavenly sandpaper that God provides in your mate.
Also known as the wife.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or it could be a good friend. Okay.
Yes.
We're told that the wounds of a friend are actually good for us in the book of Proverbs.
Right.
It could be your pastor or your elders or someone at the church. You just say, I've noticed this about you.
Yep.
And quite frankly, being a pastor, and as I've confronted some people from time to time, the first thing that people do, even if it comes up during the preaching,
they get defensive.
Yeah, they get defensive.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So, first of all, recognize that God provides those people, and sometimes it is through the preaching of His Word or the reading of His Word that conviction comes. That's the work of the Holy Spirit.
Yes.
And so whatever it is, that there is a recognition that, hey, there's a problem here. How do you get back? And that's going back to the disciplined lifestyle. Again, from 1 Corinthians chapter 9, Paul says, I'm just not running aimlessly. I do not just box one beating air. I have a plan. So you have a plan. You make a schedule and get back on that schedule, okay, and work the schedule and keep things in a disciplined order. And actually be really good to go back to the person that pointed out the problem in your life to say, hey, would you hold me accountable?
Yeah, that's even more awesome.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, for those who have like issues, our phones have created so many discipline issues for us because it's the biggest distraction, right?
Yeah.
But there are accountability apps. Actually, phones have them built in now, how much screen time you have.
Oh, yeah.
You can limit yourself. You can do all those things if you take that extra step. You can also make it to where whatever you're looking at, your accountability partner sees that you're looking at it. That's another great way to do it. Yeah. There are apps that will do that. So, but man, a cell phone is the great distractor of accountability and being focused and spiritually, not soft, right?
That's a good point, JT. Good point. Anyway, so when you're recovering, get back to the spiritual disciplines. And then, of course, includes the spiritual discipline of being faithful in a local church. And that is very important, not just reading your Bible and praying and ministering to others, but being faithful in the local church. Understand that we all need that encouragement from one another.
And it is an accountability thing.
It is.
I have to be accountable to the people at my church.
Sure.
And that's a great thing for me.
Yeah.
A lot of us look at it as, it's an extra responsibility. No, it's an accountability that God has built in. That's what He expects, as far as us being involved in our church.
That's exactly right.
All right. Question number 2. Are you ready?
Yeah.
So what does going soft mentally look like? Actually, I'm sure you and I could probably spend hours answering that.
I should ask you that question.
And again, how does one recover from going soft mentally?
I put down here when I thought about that question is, rate your drive or determination in life. How are you one that starts but never finishes things?
Oh, yeah. That's a great indication.
Question then is why you might feel mentally soft, and that sometimes we're mentally soft in the fact that we don't finish things or live up to our commitments. Sometimes we're overcommitted.
Yes.
Sometimes we try. Now, they say that women are better at multitasking than men.
Yes.
Really, nobody's real good at it because what happens is you may do several things at the same time. Yeah. But everything suffers because you haven't devoted your full attention.
Yeah, that's right. So, Jack of all trades, master of none, right?
Is that Granny's saying?
That was a Granny saying. Jack of all trades, master of none.
Yep. I wish I could have met Granny.
She was awesome, man. You'll meet her.
Yeah, I'll meet her in heaven one day. Yeah. So sometimes there's just a lack of motivation. We have to go back to why we're trying things to begin with, okay?
Yeah.
So, like as you mentioned, playing the guitar and somebody says, it's too hard, I'll quit. Okay, we go back to that. I'm going back to the fact that there are some ministers who quit. Okay, and go back to why you got in the ministry to begin with. There's an example of that in the Old Testament. His name was Jeremiah, who told God, I quit. I don't want to do this anymore. I mean, after all, he was tied up and thrown in the sewer. People were making fun of him. They were threatening him all the time. They didn't want to hear him. And so finally he said to God, I think I just quit. And then he said his word was like fire within my bones that would shut up. I have to speak.
Yeah.
So we go back to the original thing, and that is what has driven us there to begin with. And then understand that we're easily distracted. So what are the distractions in your life? You mentioned the cell phone.
It's a big one for everybody that I know. Everybody.
Because there's always a temptation, rather than doing what you need to be doing, check out what's the latest,
Yep.
And anyway, so you decide what's important. And when you recognize you are going soft mentally and your determination, so decide what is important and you prioritize it. You make a schedule, block out the distractions, and you feed your motivation and back into your mind of why you're doing these things. Remember the Apostle Paul said in Philippians chapter 4, I love this, chapter 4, verses 8 and 9. Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there's any excellence, if there's anything worthy of praise, think on these things. And Paul says, whatever you've learned and received and heard and seen in me, practice these things and the God of peace will be with you.
Yep.
Like we say all the time, when it comes to the mental and making sure that you're determined, not soft, it takes discipline. And discipline does make the difference, as we say, in all aspects of life.
In all aspects.
Yep.
I've been reading, just going through Luke, and right now I'm in chapter 11. And specifically the verse that talks about the unclean spirit and what happens really when you start to go soft spiritually and mentally. It's a warning directly from Christ about what will happen.
Exactly.
And that really, for the first time, really caught me. I'll read it real quick. Luke 11, starting in verse 24. When the unclean spirit has gone out of a person, it passes through waterless places seeking rest. And finding none, it says, I will return to my house from which I came. And when it comes, it finds the house swept and put in order because you were disciplined. You were focused, but now you're starting to, wane a little bit because
your defenses are going down.
That's right. And when it comes, it finds the house swept and put in order. Then it goes and brings 7 other spirits more evil than itself, and they enter and dwell there. And the last state of that person is worse than the first.
Wow.
Man.
Good point.
Yeah. I mean, it's staying on it spiritually and mentally is very, very important because I look back on my Christian walk and I can tell you there were peaks and there were valleys, and in the valleys it was worse than the last valley because I had done a lot of cleaning and made room for more.
And if you don't keep cleaning is not the bad thing. The bad part is dropping our guard.
Dropping your guard,
and that it comes mentally, it comes physically, and it comes spiritually. When we feel like we've arrived and we don't have to keep that guard up anymore,
that's it.
That's exactly.
It's a bad place to be. Yep.
1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 12. Let him that thinks he stands take heed lest he fall.
Yeah. All right. Question number 3. Turning to the physical aspect of life. How can a person recognize what to do when you're turning soft physically? So
listen to Gabriel. Dad.
Yeah, all you need is an 8-year-old that's going to tell you, man, your stomach's getting a little soft. Yeah, thanks, buddy. Appreciate it.
Well, it might be listening to your son or looking in the mirror or might be listening to your doctor or constantly testing yourself. But listen to this in James, see if this applies. For if anyone is a hearer of the word and not a doer, he is like a man who looks intently at his natural face in a mirror. He looks at himself and goes away at once and forgets what he was like.
Man.
That man, he says, is the one who looks into the perfect law, the law of liberty, and perseveres, being no hearer who forgets, but a doer who acts. He's blessed in his doing. So like the mental, making a decision that enough is enough, writing down your motivation, developing a plan of action in the long haul, maybe getting a coach, testing yourself regularly to mark your improvements, and making sure you're locked into a system of accountability.
Yeah. How many? Full confession on my part. How many times have I left, a group or left a sermon and been just motivated? That's it. Today is the day, right? And then tomorrow, I'm like, man, what just happened yesterday? I'm right back to acting like my same self, right? So it's super important for you to recognize that and don't be that guy, And
understand your dealing with the physical and being disciplined about the physical carries over to the mental, which carries over to the spiritual.
Yeah.
And likewise, disciplining in the spiritual realm carries over to the mental and the physical. It all goes together. So our word is discipline makes the difference in all aspects of life. Check out today's show notes at BobBrubaker.com. Click on the Power Break podcast. Today is show number 082.
And submit your questions by email to jt@bobbrubaker.com. And listen for Bob's answer on an upcoming Power Break podcast.
It's about this time of the year that we at Christ Community Presbyterian Church refocus our attention to the breastplate of remembrance, and that is, I always ask people to reboot the system. And that means you go through the ones that you have on your card, are your 12 people or 11 people, whatever it is, people that you're praying for on a regular basis, and then we ask them to resubmit them to the church, and we keep a master list, and the church prays awesome. For people
Love it.
that were concerned about coming to Christ. The book is called The Breastplate of Remembrance, and that's just simply going back to the time the priest in the Old Testament had 12 stones on his breastplate and the names of the 12 tribes of Israel, so that when he was before the Lord, he never forgot for whom he was representing. So we would like to encourage you to check out the book. Go to BobBrubaker.com, click on the resource section, and then scroll down to the books, go through the books. It's called The Breastplate of Remembrance. Check it out and order one today at BobBrubaker.com.
Well, thank you for joining us for the Power Break podcast. Please subscribe and leave a review wherever you've downloaded the podcast. And check out show notes, news, Bob's weekly blog, and other really cool things at BobBrubaker.com. Listen next time for the Power Break podcast.